I'm Jose Castro. I'm the CTO for Tropo. We're based out of San Francisco.
Hi, I'm Maartin, Ectors Cloud Strategy for Ubuntu.
Said hi already.
Mark White from Locatrix. We're an Australian developer of mobile location-based applications and web services for telcos.
Loai, Garelnabi. I manage technology at Etisalat Digital with Etisalat Group.
Cool, thanks so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up with a few rapid-fire questions to just get a feel for what the panel thinks on a few topics. And then from that then, we'll move into some more detailed questions and of course, open it up to the audience, okay? So what I'll do is I'll just run through, we've got a set of 7 questions, just give me a short answer, preferably one word if possible, and we'll just basically start from Jose and go through to Loai. So first question, how confident are you that telecom application developers and telcos can work together? Your choices are low, medium, high.
Very.
Very
High.
Very low.
Very high.
Medium.
Medium high.
Next question. In the next 2 years, where will telecom application developers have the biggest impact? Will it be on your own brand services, partnered services with partners, enterprise-focused applications, consumer, or other?
That was in the near term.
Next 2 years.
Enterprise.
Anywhere where they solve a common problem for people, and that could be any of those.
Oh, gotcha.
Own brand.
I think I'm own brand.
I think it's enterprise.
Cool. Question number 3. Within 5 years, what percentage of telco's revenue will be related to telecom application developers' endeavors? So this is no longer in 5 years. Go on, Jose.
5 years. We'll go with 10. 10%.
10%.
Well, it depends. If we don't change dramatically, I would say 0.
I'm an optimist. So I'll go for 10 to 15.
I think it depends in large part what operators do in the next 5 years.
Yeah. You're not going to give us a number? Go on. What do you feel in your gut? 5?
I'm an optimist too. I think it could be substantial. It'll be above 5%, depending on what they do in the next 5 years.
You can give us a range.
15 to 25.
Cool.
I think operators are changing. Well, it's still going to be in single digits.
Cool. Question number 4. What API matters most? Telephony, messaging, RCS payments, cross, identity, whatever you think. Starting with you, Jose.
So I'll just go with communications.
Yep. Surprise.
Anyone that can create the next Angry Bird for telco apps, and that's about innovation. Let's see who makes that one.
It's a very telco view, but it's identity and payment.
I kind of want to say other because I would add location to that, because they're things that the operator uniquely can control.
I think payment is number 1 because it's what's available today, but telephony is coming up and people are just getting it on.
Then a related question. What API matters the least that's out there being discussed? Jose. Go on.
There is no bad API, really. But
That's good. That's okay. That's a valid answer.
I'm the disruptive innovator here, and I would say actually location, because on mobile phones you already with Wi-Fi and access to all the networks can locate better where people are, even inside buildings with Bluetooth. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of value in that.
Anything that, sort of ends up tweeting you every second. So, but actually, I think the one challenge for telco operators working with developers will be around how to make location truly different, right? So,
Yeah, I kind of want to say cross and RCS. We'll make the list, I think.
Loai.
I think location, the smartphone GPS is much more
So you're seeing we're getting some good diversity of opinion here. We're nearly done. So the penultimate question, do telecom API standards matter? Jose,
Very,
yes or no?
very little.
No. That's no.
No.
Suresh.
No, but you might standardize them or say around a group of operators just so it's easier, that's all.
Right. We're talking about standards, they're all mirror GSMA, we're beating up on that.
I think no, except as a developer, I know there's going to come a point where I don't want to have to write 55 different wrappers to 55 different carriers.
I think it doesn't matter.
We have consensus. And the final one, what is the most important aspect of the ecosystem? Is it access to customers? Is it the APIs? Is it publicity? Is it business model or other?
Access to customers, definitely.
Making developers, or at least one, a millionaire, so there's another million trying to be number two.
Access to customers.
Access to customers and specifically the commercial relationship that a local operator has is going to be pretty critical.
I think the business model comes on top.
Cool. So interesting set of answers there. Some interesting diversity. So what I'll do is I'll start asking a few more sort of more probing questions, and then we'll open it up for the audience to ask any questions. So, just kicking off, what must be done to get more telecom applications and services out to customers? We've heard from Suresh, but I'm interested to hear from the other panelists your views.
Debbie down.
I am an optimist. So, like, the reason we're here, because like we're not a telco player, is exactly because we think we can help. We come from the IT. We have some very innovative products that can like do instant integration. I'll be showing that tomorrow, also a little bit today. And we can also help developers become millionaires. And we have some presentation about that one later on today. So that's the 2 points that we want to bring to the table and hopefully bring some value.
Loai?
I mean, it's multiple activities. I mean, the telecom operators need to start opening up the platforms and making a good customer experience when it comes to onboarding. And the idea is that in some markets it's hard to build a community, so it would be great if developers can, who already developed something, other markets can migrate to this market, maybe localize it, and kind of see the market.
Exactly. That's a good one.
I think one of the most critical things is for this community, and I don't mean today, but I mean over the next 2 years, is to move from the point where the question becomes not one of access, but one of innovation. If we just continually say, hey, I can do a call API and I can do a messaging API, well, guess what? In 2 years' time, we'll have calling and messaging APIs coming out of our proverbials. The neat thing is when we actually start to get a broader access to these types of APIs, the point where people can actually say, well, I can do this and this, and add this thing from over here, and then create a new service out of it. I think that's going to be the interesting point where we're at. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
I think I agree with Loai. It's very much around, for the telecom operator side, it's really creating a super easy, fast process of experimentation. And it's easy to say, but it's everything from getting rid of the form to the way we do business cases to also, it's a huge change that needs to happen. But I think if we can put that in place, then I think we really have something to work with.
So following on from that, then, and because we have a Telecom developer and we have one that runs a big community, where are telecom application developers being successful today, and why is that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I mean, several areas, right? Going back to the first question, one of the biggest challenges today, of course, is that as a telecom developer, you typically, these telco APIs are typically focused on network exposure, exposing the network, where really the greater and more exciting asset that a carrier has is the user base, and of course that billing relationship. Network exposure is, it's important, but we can sit here and debate which API is the best for a really long time and not really get anywhere. So unfortunately, developers today are forced to basically consume communication services and then find their own market. Traditionally, where that's been happening has been in enterprise and really kind of disrupting non-traditional kind of markets like outbound notification, political campaigns, and also contact centers. So it's very much enterprise focused what we're seeing today. On the consumer side, at least from our perspective, we're not seeing that much adoption of traditional telco services because, well, quite frankly, it's easier and cheaper to go over the top. But that can change, of course, if operators make it more attractive to kind of join their user communities.
I want to say there's probably two areas that I think today that telco developers have been successful. One really makes me sad. It's the folks that are still making money out of premium SMS services in a lot of countries. Because increasingly these services are the same things you were seeing 15 years ago when SMS was sort of opened up. They don't really add that much value to a user's life, and you certainly don't get a great user experience. Sadly, if I look around, say in the Asian region today, the folks who are in telco app development who are making reasonable point, our folks are doing that, and that's not the path to innovation. That's effectively the path to exploitation, just based on some of the content. The other thing, which is I think going to end up as a cultural, and we're firmly in this camp. We have a fairly big customer in Australia. We're our largest customer in Australia, who's really hard to work with because they're really big and we're really quite small. So when they ask us to do things, there are companies who can get very close to operators and establish relationships, and we see this sometimes. We aren't falling directly in the camp, but they just overcharge you folks for services because you're a big company you can pay. And I actually think that you see the same in the general iOS app development world. If it's a big brand, they charge more. And I think that's because there's still, relatively speaking, a smaller pool of app developers than there is, say, web developers, and they get away with it. Yeah. And I'd actually like to see both of those situations change, instead be focused on value created for a consumer, value created for a partner in the ecosystem, and that should result in value for the developer.
Yeah, that's a great point. Any other comments? Open it up to the audience. Any questions? If you didn't get a chance to ask Suresh in his presentation, you can ask. Now or forever, hold your peace.
From different screens. So I think it has a lot of potential. There's a lot of what we're talking about today. Developers just innovating, developing new types of experience, new types of application, helping the operations monetize their voice communications.
I was going to say the one point where I think WebRTC is going to have value is that it's a type of technology which will lend itself to interoperability. And this is an area where standardization is fairly important, because I know Sky, prior to the Microsoft acquisition, had made some inroads in that direction, which I think could change the world in how voice communications interfaces with the traditional fixed or cellular operators. WebRTC, I think, is going to lend itself much better to that, because I think it'll be great. Browser, telephony, all over it. But if there'll be that integration point into the fixed or the mobile operators, I think where you'll actually be able to provide some level of monetization and value for enterprises.
You have to be careful, Dean.
Yeah.
No, more than browser.
Sorry.
Right. Well, actually, to that point, I think we often forget that. Well, first off, I definitely wanted to agree with Mark here that one thing that WebRTC has done is, in our mind, has created a simplified profile for real-time communications on the web. Basically took an alphabet soup of protocols and different options that we've been piling on for many years and said, no, this is how we're going to do it. This is the new standard approach, and it's very simple, 5 protocols. So of course that has a tremendous value. Hopefully we'll start seeing more interop. But I think we often do forget today that WebRTC is just that. It's web. only. Sorry, Dean, but the reality is that if you really want to do WebRTC today, you're stuck in a web browser. I don't have the most recent stats here, but I see people use their phones and they don't spend a lot of time in their web browsers. They're spending time in Facebook, in WhatsApp, doing various things. And the app economy and kind of the app revolution is fundamentally changed how people engage with the internet, right? It's no longer the web. It's kind of the internet and applications. There are people trying to change that, of course. Firefox. I know Google and many of the players here have a vested interest in changing that. And maybe the web will be the app platform someday, but it isn't today. So I think it would behoove us all to temper our excitement with WebRTC and really consider that it's really just VoIP. It's with a web API.
I tend to agree. I think it's very interesting. I think as an operator, you need to look out for it. As developers, I think it could be a kind of industry-shaping technology, but it's not clear. And I probably see a lot more users in enterprise right now. It's sort of just because of the way all the use cases are turning up on my desk, right? So, but possibly let's see where it goes. I don't think that we would discount it. But it still seems a little far away from being a sort of super disruptive technology. So I might be wrong, but which is why I'm watching it, so just in case, right? So, but that's so we probably see things early adoption in say a country like Malaysia around enterprise, particularly small business, where they need they don't have a call center. They want simple call me type functions, but that's probably a very exciting use case that we should try and drive more aggressively.
And just a plug for tomorrow, we have Dan Burnett, who is one of the editors of the WebRTC spec and also the author of the WebRTC book, who will be presenting a good hour and a half around WebRTC. And of course, we have Dean's presentation in the telco session. We'll be really exploring the impact of that on telco's future services. So we will tomorrow be delving a lot more into that. Again, to the audience, any questions? We have Mac at the back, and then we have Eva.
Mac Taylor from Huawei. It was interesting to get the opinion from the panel on the revenue that might be generated from these new telecom applications that might emerge over the next 5 years. So we had a kind of, from Jose, I think it was 10%, we had 10%, 20% potentially. And also we had the question of where will this have most impact? Is it going to be consumer or SME or enterprise? And Loai said enterprise. So we're looking at 10% potentially of telecom's overall revenues being generated for the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, primarily in enterprise. So from your perspective, Suresh, when you're looking at use cases that are coming across your desk, are you looking at enterprise? Are you looking at SME? Are you looking at consumer? Where are you seeing the most promise for these new set of applications? And just one final point, you mentioned the APIs that would be most useful would be, I think, identity and payments, right? And Loai mentioned payments. So, and then of course Jose's mentioned communication. So we have quite a diversity of opinion, but if it's going to be, for example, identity and payments, how do you see that really generating 10% of revenue, and in which sector is it going to be?
Thank you. I think the first question is very much, I think it's consumer and possibly SME. And it may be reflective of, say, the markets we operate in relative to, say, Etisalat. But typically in an emerging market in Asia, I cannot get enterprise to pay for anything, right? Everything is free, and it comes with 10 phones, please, right? And they need to be upgraded every year. So there is just a basic market structure thing about getting any enterprise CIO to pay for something. The second problem is when you're a large mobility carrier, you have no idea how to sell these things to enterprise CIOs. You do not know how to monetize it, you do not know how to price it. Everything is priced on a per consumer type approach. So it's also, working with what we have. we therefore think that it really is going to have much more promise around consumers and SME. Sorry.
Just one comment on the enterprise thing, because we hear that a lot in our business, is saying that the willingness to pay, actually on both sides, consumer and enterprise, is quite low. But I think the key is to disassociate the payment from your phone bill. We talk about the billing relationship being important, but there are ways that you can go about adding or selling enhanced enterprise features or even consumer features without the user necessarily feeling that they're increasing their phone bill. I'll give you an example. We're working with some operators globally to add CRM integrations into the calling and messaging experience. So just a standard phone call, I pick up the phone, call a colleague or one of my vendors, and as that call is being connected in the network, of course, we can do all kinds of things, Salesforce.com integration, etc. The trick here, though, is that the operator has an opportunity to place this app in the Salesforce app exchange. So psychologically, the user perceives it as a Salesforce add-on and not as a telco feature, right? And the same can be done for consumer, right? And this can be done for carrier-branded services, but also for, and probably more importantly, by the developers themselves. Having the operators allow for developers to leverage their users doesn't necessarily mean that this app is going to be tucked away in some consumer portal in the carrier, right? You want the developers to be able to market these solutions themselves so that psychologically the user sees it as they're paying Joe developer and not, X carrier, right? And it's a fundamental psychology that I think is going to change the way consumers approach network services, just like it's changed how they consume apps. If I buy a game on my iPhone, I'm paying Apple, but I don't feel that I'm buying from Apple. I'm buying from Frog Media or from Zynga or from whatever. So I've created a relationship with the developer, not with the person processing the payment.
So I think that's probably right. The question is how to, maybe it's about the skill that the average Southeast Asian telco has around enterprise, perhaps. But I agree, and actually that's the answer to the second question. How will we make money from identity and billing? It's not from identity and billing. It's from the things that sit on identity and billing. We've actually got to make identity a bit better because we need to match addresses and so forth. But the reality is in our markets, most people are prepaid. They don't have a credit card, and they may have a significant amount of distrust about putting information out there. So there's a fairly high degree of trust on prepaid billing systems because you prepaid, there's a dollar value there. So we think that if we can work with developers, it doesn't matter what the app is. The point is that we can provide, look, so-and-so is so-and-so. He is buying it, and if there's some need to authenticate the person, we can authenticate against our systems. We can also then, if you need a second layer of authentication, it can be based around, well, what location ID did you get? Well, I have this location ID as well. So that's a second degree of match that you can provide. And yes, we can deduct it off the IN as well. So I think it's, it's not identity apps, nor is it billing apps. It's really about whatever, right, that people want to create. But it's harnessing the ability to know the person and to sort of find a payment mechanism as well, which is probably where it's going to be. This number, by the way, 10 to 15, is because SMS revenues are around 15 to 20, right? So seeing as SMS probably won't disappear completely, I think about half of that, half of it may disappear, and you kind of hope that the rest of it comes back from the sort of API-centric approach as well, right? The second approach is actually, I think, an earlier question. I think telcos will create their own services, some with disastrous effects. Occasionally, it's something quite, quite brilliant. So we've got these 4 million users on Colony. It's not really generating a lot of money, but it seems quite sticky. So, we now need to think, how do I now build a more OTT mindset into monetizing these customers without suddenly saying, okay, now you have to pay me $4.99 to keep your access. So I believe that's a second way that operators will probably find some revenue as well from new platform-centric approaches as well.
So for the sake of time, I'd just like to have Evelyn ask your question, and then we'll wrap up after the panel. So if you could pass the mic down to the front here.
that earlier on almost everybody agreed that standards are irrelevant, and then now everybody almost agreed that WebRTC is a good standard. Yeah. Just being a devil's advocate. Is it the intention obviously is great, solving the end-by-end nightmare matrix, but as we saw last week, yet again, nobody can agree. H.264.
So I didn't speak when WebRTC was mentioned, but I did say standards are irrelevant, and I want to explain myself a little bit. In the internet, the way things work, it's like whoever gets the biggest market share becomes the standard. And you can have 25 other bodies explaining that that shouldn't be the standard, but it's irrelevant. If you capture the market and you're 70% of the market, you are the standard. And in telecom, there are at this moment players on the web that are having a lion's share of the developers doing things. For me, they're the standard. There's nobody behind them, but they're just used by everybody.
I want to say that's a really good point, because standards are awesome for interoperability. The standards done well mean that us as developers get to do stuff faster and more productively. The biggest problem with the standards process, and certainly when it comes to telecoms, where the legacy has been, is just how damn long it takes them to get to the point where they agree. And you know, the thing about, a camel is a horse designed by committee. That can be what you have. So you get to the point where we've got a standard, and then the standard body then takes it to vendors. Vendors then start pitching to operators, and 5 years later we've got an implementation we can code against. In the internet, that's like 5 weeks. And I think there's going to be a trend over time with telco APIs in general, irrespective of what the underlying API is, to reduce that time to opening up that access, and winners will emerge based on market share. And then probably in a couple of years' time we'll discuss about how we roll 3 or 4 different standards back into one. But that's it. At least we're doing that with enough critical mass of developers, hopefully some commerce to make it sort of financially worthwhile, and consumers who are using the services to make it a worthwhile discussion, not 3 or 4 years of getting to Geneva.
Maybe a final comment you were going to make, Rosina?
That was more of a joke than anything else. No, I agree fundamentally, but of course, if implementation gets too far ahead of the standards, you end up with something like Internet Explorer 6, which I think we all recognize, basically set the internet back like 2 years, like the whole internet. Yeah, it's gone away, but it took like 10 years and a lot of frustration. Yeah.
Cool. So let's thank the panel for excellent discussion.